Hello from Hollywood. My name is Anthony Boyer. I'm a talent agent in the Los Angeles and New York markets, and today on Take Fountain, we're going to talk about how to create a professional resume. So what is an acting resume? Well, first of all, it's going to list your relevant acting experience. What do I mean by relevant? Well, for instance, if you were, say, a 30-year-old man, you're probably not going to want to put the time you played Oliver in your community playhouse production of Oliver when you were 7 years old on your current acting resume. Another thing to remember is that this is going to serve as a complement to your headshot. So these are your two primary marketing materials. It's going to be your headshot and your resume. So make sure that they're telling the same story. Another thing you're going to want to make sure is on your resume is how to contact you. Whether that's going to be through email or cell phone. If you have a website, you're going to want to put a link to that on your resume. Just have something that tells people, if they want to hire you for an acting job, how to contact you. And you're also going to want to put relevant skills, training, things that you as an actor can bring to the table that might help you book jobs. If you speak a language, for instance, or if you can juggle, or if you can ride horseback, if you can fire guns. Those kinds of physical skills are great too. Anything that kind of helps people figure out how they're going to hire you should be on your resume. The thing to keep in mind is that less is more. You're going to want to keep this really clean, really easy to read. This is not the time to show off your crazy graphic design skills. You're not going to want weird fonts. You're not going to want weird graphic design. You're going to want to make sure that everything's lined up, everything is ship-shape, your columns are straight. You don't need photos. You don't need logos of every agency you work with, plastering this is valuable real estate on your resume. So just make sure that this is telling the story of you as a performer. If you do have an agent, yes, you want to put their information on there, but you don't want to just give away a ton of real estate. So on the header of your resume, it's going to be some key information. Number one, your name. Make absolutely sure your name is on your resume, it's legible, it's prominent, that you have any representation that you have is listed on there so that people know how to contact you. This is a really good place to put that contact information. You're also going to want to put, depending on what the resume is meant to accomplish, maybe you want to put your height, maybe you want to put your vocal range if you're a singer, anything that sort of separates you. You're also going to want to put your union status here if you're SAG, if you're equity, anything like that, you're going to want to put in this header section. The body of the resume is where you're going to list your credits, and you're going to break it into sections. Typically, there are certain sections that we typically have. However, the thing to keep in mind is that form really follows function. For instance, if you are a film actor, you've only really done film, you don't necessarily need to have a television section that you're going to cram some weird thing into that isn't really relevant, or you don't necessarily have to have a theater section. Those kinds of things, you don't have to check boxes here. If all you have is films, then all you have is films. If all you have is training, then all you have is training. So keep in mind as I go through these sections that you only need to use what's relevant for you. One of the first sections you're going to want to put in most instances is going to be films. Just because many actors start off with films. They start off with independent films or student films, that kind of thing. And here you're going to have three columns. The first column is going to have the title of the film. The second column is going to have the size or the name of your role. And then the third column is going to have the director, or if it's a studio film, the studio and the director's name. So basically you want to have the title, the billing or the role, and then the director or the studio. So in the television section, you're going to want to have in the first column, again, three columns. In the first column, you're going to want to have the title. In the second column, you're going to want to have billing. Now, what do I mean by billing? I mean co-star, guest star, recurring, series regular, those types of things. You're probably not going to put your character name unless there's a very specific reason why you need to do that. Maybe it's a series regular, something like that. But for the most part, you're not going to put a character name here. You're just going to put the billing. And then to the right, you're going to put, then the right-hand column, you're going to put the network, and if there's room, the director. One thing that I like to tell people when they're building really all of the sections, but especially television, this does not need to be chronological. I like a resume to tell your story to someone who doesn't know you. And so feel free to drop the co-stars down towards the bottom and then the guest stars a little higher up, even if they're not sequential, because then it tells the story of someone who started small and has been building, because people will read it sequentially, even if it's not written sequentially. So they kind of look at it as a hierarchy. So just keep that in mind. You know, you want to look like your bigger credits, your more prominent credits are towards the top. And that way they're grabbing more attention. Moving into another section might be theater. Now, depending on your theater resume, you might break this up into Broadway, national tours, regional, and educational theater. But regardless, even if you just have one section, however you break this up, again, we're going to have 3 columns. On the left-hand side, you guessed it, the title, the name of the piece, the name of the show. In the second column, you're going to want the character name. This is one area where you actually do want to put the character name. So if you did Little Shop of Horrors and you played Audrey, put Audrey. Don't put lead. People don't know what to make of that. Like if you've put Audrey, it means a specific thing to people. Theater is different than film and television just because there are shows in existence and people do the same shows, and so a role means something a little bit more in the theater. And then on the right, you're going to want to put the producing organization, the theater, and then if you have room, the director or the choreographer. Breezing right along. In the next, another section is commercials and industrials. There's some debate here. I don't personally feel like you need to put this section on an acting resume, but if you do put it on there, what you don't want to do is put a list of all of the commercials you've ever booked. And the reason is, let's say that you shot a Pepsi-Cola commercial 6 years ago. They're no longer using that commercial. It's dead, it's done with, but you want to put it on your resume because you shot it. That's going to signal to advertisers in that space. So let's say Coca-Cola sees that resume. They are less likely to hire you because they're going to think you have what's called a conflict. So the reason you don't put that is because now it might scare away potential buyers rather than sell you to those potential buyers. Another section that you might want to put is voiceover credits. Now, voiceover is a little bit complicated just because, number one, if this resume is to sell you as an on-camera actor or a stage actor, the relevance of voiceover credits is a little bit questionable. But also, like, there's no specific formatting, like that 3-column format that we've talked about for everything else, because voiceover can be many different things. Voiceover can be a commercial. You might have booked a video game. You might have done an animated feature. So it can mean a lot of different things. There's no real uniform way to present that. If you are going to have a voiceover, let's say, for instance, that you've booked a lot of voiceover, and so you want to make sure that people know you're a professional, you've been around, I would say just find a formatting that really suits that. You're probably going to want to do like a 2-column where you have the project and then maybe the role name or the billing or something. Maybe a 3rd column, like, for instance, maybe Rockstar Games or whatever. So just basically whatever you need it to accomplish. There's no uniform way to put a voiceover section here. One thing someone once mentioned to me that I really like is that you want your resume to tell people what your next job should be, not what your last job was. So think about this again. This is a marketing tool. It's not a history of you as an actor. I think sometimes we get into this pattern where we want to just say, like, here's all the things I've done, love me. But here, this is specifically to tell people what they should book you as next. So the next section to talk about is training. Training is an area where you are going to put basically anything that you've trained in. Seems obvious, right? So if you have a college degree, for instance, you're going to put, your BFA in acting here. You're going to put your individual teachers, if you have voice teachers, movement teachers, anything along those lines. These are great places to put your training. If you have on-camera classes, if you're in a regular scene study class, if you did a voiceover workshop, those kinds of things, I think, go here. Again, keep it relevant, keep it as tight as possible, but also show people who you know and what you've done. and what you're trained in. And then the final thing to talk about really is skills. Special skills, a lot of people will put at the bottom. This is an area where a lot of people have a lot of different opinions. I'm here to tell you my opinion on special skills. I don't love people making this like a weird collection of skills. I like to keep this relevant. I like to keep this with skills that you're current at right now. I think this is really important, is people might put like, oh, I played clarinet in high school, so I'll put clarinet. If you can't pick up a clarinet and play it tomorrow in an audition or in a performance setting, I wouldn't put that on there. And a lot of people then ask like, well, what about if I put beginner clarinet? Again, if you need to fill space, I guess that's okay. I wouldn't do it just because, again, this is meant to tell people what to hire you for next. And if you are not a clarinet player, I don't think they should hire you to play clarinet. Would you agree? So regardless, so you're going to want to keep it current. You're going to want things that are performance quality. Particular things that I think you should highlight are language skills. If you're fluent in a language, even if you're conversational in a language, I think this is a really good place to put that. If you're fluent with a script, for instance, if I have, 3 days with Spanish, I can sound like I speak Spanish. I think that's reasonable to put. Anything that might appear on camera, horseback riding, weapons, combat, dance, anything like that, I think is really relevant and really should go here. And a lot of people like to have like an icebreaker, like party trick skill. Again, like I can quack like a duck. It can be nice in an audition setting to have that icebreaker, but I will say this, I find a lot of times it feels just a little try hard for me. So I would say use it with extreme caution if you're going to put something like that in, just because I feel like this is the point of this exercise is, again, to tell people how to hire you and what to hire you for. And so if it's not something that's going to serve that purpose, I personally feel like it's best left off. And because you've been so great and watched to the end, I do have one bonus tip. So typically I've been talking specifically about your paper resume, or you might be a PDF form, but the resume that you're going to send to people when you audition for them or want to audition for them. But there is also a specific type of resume that is basically your breakdowns profile or your casting networks profile, which is not necessarily an actual resume, but it lists your skills and you can like check boxes. Now, if you have representation, first of all, I would encourage you to ask them what is useful for them to have for submissions. Some people like to know that you played clarinet in high school. Some people only want to know if you can show up tomorrow and audition with it. So talk to your reps and just make sure you're aligned on that. Specifically with casting networks, though, you can actually rank how good you are at these skills. So that might be a really good chance to put clarinet 1 or something like that where, I'm conversational in Spanish, or I can read Russian, but I can't necessarily speak it. So those kinds of things are really good in the digital form. You can be a little more open and a little more facile with what you do, but just make sure that if you do have representation that you're aligned in that approach. All right. Thank you so much for watching. If you got value out of this video, click like. Click subscribe and the notification bell. That way you get alerted every time we have new videos. And thanks so much for watching.